Shabbat Shalom and a blessed Sabbath to you wherever you may be. As you see, the topic of discussion is the resurrection of the Christian Passover, or the Passover amongst believers in Yeshua as the Messiah. And we're going to look at the last 200 years and developments that have happened, just so you know some of the history and how Passover has become a practice done again. Now, for those who don't know, my name is Andrew Hodkinson, and every Sabbath, 6 p.m. time, Jerusalem, I put out a teaching just to encourage you in a variety of topics in relation to Hebraic roots or Messianic faith. So let's get into this. So, the resurrection of the Christian Passover, and let's look at some of the history here. I think sometimes it's good just to remind ourselves where we come from and how traditions have changed with time. I found this. It's a picture of the Ethiopian chapel, I think, sacred space that's around the Holy Sepulchre in Old Jerusalem. And it's just mindful of shifts that have happened with time, some that have stayed more old. You can see the iconography, halos and various figures, as it were. And this comes into play with what we are talking about because, well, for those who don't know, the Passover became the bread and wine that you had to weekly get on a Sunday from a priest. It was the sacrifice changed into that you had to get from a priest on an altar in a temple, and so the tradition developed. But well, we know things have slowly changed with time, and one of the things, just to show you with another building within Jerusalem, and this is going to come into play. This is the Lutheran Church, and of course, I think without a doubt in the West, Luther has had a huge impact on how we view theology, our God, as believers in Yeshua, and also how we worship Him. I think without a doubt, the number one thing being that of sola scriptura, or at least that our faith needs to resemble what we find in the scriptures. I think that's the biggest challenge, or certain weight that we put to the discussion of what would be the early church of Acts and the body of believers in the first century. Now, within this, as I've been getting these different pictures around Jerusalem, the reason I'm doing this is because of a guy. That's the inside of the Lutheran Church in Jerusalem, and here we just see a bit of a contrast, the simpler lines. Less iconography, just a simple cross, and I forget the name of that symbol there by the altar, but much pulled back, let's say, and simplified in many ways, and that's part of our tradition, as it were. But in this tradition, I want to introduce you to someone by the name of Joachim Jeremias, and he's been very influential in terms of Passover, and just he was extremely influential in just going to, what can I say, as a pioneer, as a visionary, looking at new things. He wrote a few books. He went to Jerusalem many times, a German theologian. So Germany was very dominant, 1800s going into the 1900s. Then it shifted more across towards America. But he wrote a few books. The one is Jerusalem in the Time of Jesus, and very much what many people would consider the first attempts to restore what people call I think it's the third wave of the historical Jesus, of getting back to Yeshua as a Jew, trying to understand our Messiah in that kind of context. He was extremely um, revolutionary in that regard. And he wrote other books there, see one on New Testament theology, but very connected in Jerusalem in trying to understand scripture in a Jewish context. Um, and even in his Eucharistic words of Jesus, you really get a sense of someone trying to wrestle with early days of wrestling with the bread and the wine in terms of what are we to understand of it? A memorial meal within Jewish custom, less sacrifice, but a memorial representation of sacrifice, perhaps, and grappling as well with the Passover tradition, and perhaps there was a reinvention of the Passover, but he was fully convinced that that Messiah kept the Passover. And we say these things so simply today, but these were revolutionary ideas just to put out there in terms of his identity. And so we really stand on the backs of shoulders of men like this who really did an amazing job. And we need to learn more about this. Someone else I have here, this is Andrew Duggar. Andrew Duggar, I came across him when I was in Kenya doing some missionary work there, and you just suddenly realize different streams of theology are bringing people across paths. And someone said, "Oh, you must know of Andrew Duggar. Never heard of the guy." I was like, "What's the name? What's the name?" No, fundamentally important person to this black man. They were keeping Passover and festivals in a certain context there in Africa. This man went from the USA. He was originally an Adventist, and then he didn't become Seventh-day Adventist. He went kind of full on into festivals as well, reading the scriptures again out of this tradition of reading scriptures for what they say. And he was in Jerusalem. There's still a remnant of his work in there. I believe there's a printing press and church there. And I came across his his work in Kenya. A lot of African people touched, but not just there, also Nigeria and different places, and very pioneers on these things. And obviously went to do missions work and teach what he believed were the ways of God, but revolutionary, new ideas, and Passover being central to this, and all the festivals for that matter. And then for those who know this character, Don Esposito, I didn't realize, but he's related as well through that part of the church and that tradition as they're trying to restore the Hebraic roots. He wrote the Hebraic Roots Bible. Some of you may have it. I think he renders the name Yahweh and Yeshua. So it's just interesting seeing the different streams that flowed, but certainly from this reading the Bible as it is written, especially our New Covenant writings, and really realizing what are we going to do with these rites? What are we going to do with these traditions? All right, and here's another character really famous. You might know of him, Herbert Armstrong. He did he built a massive church called the Worldwide Church of God, and very successful. Had a love for Israel, has some unique early ideas on two-house theology. Very much again a pioneer, and had also restoring the ideas of keeping Pesach. He left an organization, you may have come across it before, called ABA, the Armstrong Institute of Biblical Archaeology in Jerusalem. They get teams out to Jerusalem and help with digs. The nations are there helping with digs. He obviously left a foundation, works with the Israel Authority there, and really fascinating stuff being done there. And he was very, very conscious of Jerusalem, conscious of, again, historical identity of Yeshua, historical understanding of the scriptures, and festivals, Sabbath, all these things was a part of that, and so it's good to know again. But these were pioneers, early days. I've got a dig here that he's done. He's passed on, but the organization is carried on with. You may know this area. They call it the Ophel, and going around towards the Western Wall, as it were. And yeah, tons of work being done there. Mazar has been very much involved. And so it's really, yeah, I believe they've got new funding for more to be done. And so it's great to see these kind of things. And what's interesting is that Armstrong was such a strong character. And it's very sad when he eventually passed away. The organization very much splintered up, thousands of different groups. And yet, there's always some element of good that is left, and that's also, I think, really a symbol of the kingdom, that we just have to trust that ultimately He will build. We will labor in vain, but Father, establish what you can establish. I think that picture of ruins and that, even with time, you never know what might be established with time. It may seem as though everything's broken down, but often there's good to be found. So, and then there's getting even more modern. I think a new stream, as it were, of influence. This was quite an influence to myself at the age of, I think, about 11. In South Africa, I kept the first Pesach Passover meal as a young guy, and read a book my dad bought from Jews for Jesus. You may know of them. This is Moshe Rosen. He founded Jews for Jesus, and he wrote this book, Christ and the Passover. And it was an interesting read. I think it, again, opens up many questions. It's a different take. It's trying to understand these elements, trying to understand the different things Messiah did, but also brought an interesting stability to discussion around Passover. And so the Messianic Jews here we're talking about. So these are Jewish believers as they are grappling with, hold on, this is our Messiah. This was his practice. He did keep Torah. He did walk in the ways of our fathers. How did he do this? And they're a lot less reluctant in general to move away from the Jewish manner, as it were, although they do have distinctions. Some of you may have come across Jeff Morgan. Got this here. Yeah, that's in the center with his wife. So pull up the slide in the center there with his wife Yael. For Jews for Jesus, and even hearing him talking on Tel Aviv, I'm sure some of you have seen those productions. There's an understanding of, well, we want to follow Torah, but not necessarily with all the added laws, as it were. There's a distinction of the tradition of the elders, so that is coming through. Although the default is very much towards the historic Jewish interpretation, and that's why I also just put in here Nehemiah Gordon, unique in a sense that he, that's Nehemiah's the bald one on the left there. He's unique in that he's come in amongst more the Hebraic roots crowd. It's a very strange family that we have. And he's been pointing this out about the difference between oral law and the tradition of the rabbis. And again, it's a scripturalist thing. So I think it works very strong within the Protestant world, our view of the scriptures and how we are trying to get back to ground zero. So Nehemiah is an important character, not a believer in Yeshua, as far as I know, but anyway, friendly towards believers, sees in Messiah's teaching parallels with Karaitism, scripturalist views, and so there's that crossover there. So he's been very influential as well on many in the practices of Passover, getting back to the simplicity of the word, as it were. Although I don't know if he would encourage non-Jews to keep the Passover. Not too sure. All right. So I think in conclusion, I just want to leave it there. I think I want to just say that it looks quite messy. We talk about the messianics and messy antics, and there's a lot of division. There's a lot of different churches. There's the Church of Yahweh, the First Church of Yahweh. There's varieties within the desire to restore Sabbath feasts. And what do we sometimes do with that? I think sometimes it can be disheartening. I think we need to look with broad eyes, in a sense. It's not that we mustn't be focused on doctrine and really try and hammer out, trying to find the truth, as it were, but to really also have a broad sense um, of the body. Of the body, that the body of Messiah, I really believe from the start to the finish, from looking at that Ethiopian chapel to where we're at, I think he's working in all people as we're just seeking him. And to be mindful of just because there's different interpretation, we don't know the hearts of people. We cannot write people off. We don't know the hearts of all people. We don't know if our view is right. We obviously will think we do, but we have to be clothed in an element of humility. And I don't like this kind of "we are the chosen church" thing. It's a great marketing tool, but it's not fitting for the body of Messiah. I think even with different calendars, different expressions, different ideas of what is the Pesach exactly, we can show a bit of forbearance with each other. But I hope you enjoy seeing the history and the growth, and to know that there are different characters before us, from Joachim Jeremias right through, that there are these characters who've pushed the boundaries and have helped liberate ideas. And I think we really are getting a clearer picture through time of Messiah and his people and the kingdom he's wanting to establish. So I think it's good if we find that we're coming back to the central points in terms of place, being conscious of Israel, being conscious of Jerusalem. I think it's good if we are finding ourselves coming back to the base text, to really try and read the scriptures as they were written, in context, to really try and not be biased by our tradition. I think that's also a good place. Thirdly, I think to be mindful of practice and to say, how did Yeshua walk? What was his way? What was his manner? How did he interpret the Torah? How did he interpret the prophets? And how can we, with good integrity, try and walk out those things where we are? And so I think it's good, I think, for people just getting back to lamb, unleavened bread, and bitter herbs. The simplicity of practice, I think there is that, but also you can enjoy the heritage, I think, as well, in more complex ideas. And then, as I said, to be mindful of we're a body, so love one another. Even in the presence of disagreement, we have to love one another, represent Messiah to the body. And then fifthly, I think it's really good if we're conscious of our spirits gravitating towards our God, that we really see this as built on relationship, of love, of a restoration, not out of legalism and compulsion by man, but we really feel of genuine compulsion, that we're trying to get to the roots of our faith, to ground zero, to we're digging down, and think of those archaeological sites. We're trying to get to the base of this story. And I believe as we do that, we head in a good direction. I think we just need a bit more love one for another in the complexities that surround this issue. But to know there are many that wish to keep the Passover right. I want to encourage more and more of you as we're heading up there to do that. And so I just pray that as you prepare, that you'll have a blessed time as we're heading up there. And I think one more week or so, and so may it really be blessed. Much love in Messiah Yeshua, and I hope that you have a better sense of the history of the resurrecting of the Passover rite. Shabbat Shalom.